I'm relatively new to this side of it, so I just want to make sure that everyone's okay. I can do an overview of Snowflake to so kind of bring everyone up to speed. If you're already familiar with Snowflake, that's absolutely fine. We could kind of move on to, I think this was kind of pitched at some of the new features within Snowflake that have been released. If that's relevant, then I will kind of focus on that side of it. Is there any?
Yeah, I think from the feedback we received, I think any sort of demo is definitely appreciated on what people would love to be able to see it. But yeah,
Yeah,
the pitch was at what's kind of coming in the new year, what are the new
sure,
features, a lot of interest in how it's currently being used within the NHS and within trust and what it has to offer.
sure.
So,
Okay,
but yeah,
that's
whatever
fine.
you want to share with us, we are happy for.
Yeah, so I'll share my screen and then I will show you certainly. I'll start off with a quick demo just to kind of give you an idea of some of the new features that effectively have kind of been available. So this is, and I'll start off with this because it's kind of effectively probably where we kind of see the direction of travel with a lot of organizations around AI. I'm sure you've kind of had these conversations within your own organization, basically around how you could use AI, etc. Now, I'll show you the way we are kind of delivering this within the platform. So Snowflake obviously is known for its data platform and essentially the ability to store that data and essentially kind of consolidate that from the various different sources and different types of data and all of those kind of things. What this is basically leveraging once an organization does that, so you have a good data foundation, that's all kind of data in the right place, then essentially how can you quickly leverage some of these new capabilities that are available and everyone's kind of talking around. So in this case, I'm using what we call Snowflake Intelligence. So Snowflake Intelligence is essentially that kind of natural language capability, that AI capability that you can kind of converse with the data. And I will kind of show you how this is effectively kind of built up. But essentially, the idea is that you have agentic AI within the platform. So Janet's just arrived. So yeah. Hi Janet, I was just about to kick off. I wasn't sure if you wanted to preamble any of the stuff I do before about what we're doing in the NHS, etc.
Yeah, I'll just do a quick introduction. Apologies for being late.
No
It is
worries.
it's the end of our fiscal, so there's a lot going on at the moment. So I just really wanted to start by saying thank you for inviting us to present. Snowflake has a very well established footprint within the NHS. Our first customer was Greater Manchester Integrated Care Board. They weren't
Oh,
called that though
yeah.
when they were a customer. As you know, the NHS has been through quite a few iterations in the last last 8 to 9 years. So we have national deployment in National Services Scotland, so we can scale nationally, but we are very much being used at ICB level and within NHS trust level, largely because of our ability to federate and share data. So some of you on the call might be aware that we are the sort of the chosen platform, as it were, for One London. So we have the 5 ICBs using our platform. We also have a number of trusts in London and ICBs outside of London's. But our typical use cases are very much around population health management and being able to bring lots of data sets together to be able to share that data in a secure and governed way. And we were really pleased to be members of AphA. And what we want to show today is some of the highlights from Summit, including Snowflake Intelligence. And I'll hand you over to Irfan.
Yeah, that's great. So I'll just quickly share my screen again. So yeah, thanks for that, Janet. I didn't start with what we're doing in the LHS, which was exactly what I needed from Janet, basically. So I'll carry on. So as I was saying, I'm going to start with a very quick kind of demo of what an agentic AI could look like within Snowflake, effectively delivered in this The key principle here is that we're delivering this data, as Janet said, basically in a trusted way. So the idea is that it's governed. You have the guardrails in place around this. So essentially, this is your data, and this is the AI models running against your data. And again, those AI models are not on the public internet, so your data isn't shipped outside of Snowflake to effectively utilize this. Those models are actually, effectively installed and execute their workload within your Snowflake instance. So it fundamentally tries to address that concern that a lot of organizations have, is once you look at one of these large language models, they have terms and conditions if you're using their public versions, which effectively allow them to use your data for training purposes. This eliminates that. So obviously it kind of makes that conversation with IG a little bit easier to kind of have. And obviously we as an organization would help and support that conversation with any of the relevant people. So what you can see here is a very kind of simple interface. Quickly give you an overview of what we're seeing here. I have agents effectively. These agents are on different kind of components. So basically they are different data sets which exist within the organization. So in this case, you can see that I've got some slightly dated, but COVID data. I've got cost of care. So if I was looking at the care records, basically, I've got some population health. I've got a couple which I did for various organizations. But this would be role-based access control. I am in as an administrator, so I can see essentially all the objects there. If you were deploying this within your organizations, certain people will be able to see this aspect of it in terms of the functionality. Some people would not. You would have that complete control over who has access to this. So I'm going to just use the genomics one for this example, but you can see that I could switch to population health and ask questions around that if I wanted to. So let's just go on to the genomics one. And you can see there we have some preloaded questions. If I wanted to just use one of those questions, I also have a history of what's available. So in this case, I'll just use one of these to save me typing it out. There you go. It's kind of, so you see it was a kind of fairly long question in that it's kind of asking for multiple kind of aspects of it. So it's not necessarily gonna, so what I'm not trying to do is a very simple question that just says tell me the number of this or whatever, basically. So there's got to be a little bit of reasoning behind this. So we're looking at the EHR system. So I've kind of guided it to kind of look for that kind of element of it. I'm looking at the GP notes to get their NHS numbers, and then I'm looking at those patients around the genomic data. So there's kind of multiple steps here that people that I'm asking this to do. So you can see that I can see the visibility of what's happening. The nice thing is you're actually seeing the SQL that it's actually running as well. So if you wanted to validate this SQL, you could take that SQL and run it in a workspace basically and effectively execute that. The advantage of that is that you have that visibility. If you then want to push this further down up to the left, essentially into a pipeline, you can take that code and you can move it into a pipeline, and then those outcomes are already created, and you can create the extra columns in the data. So you could effectively service that through a standard dashboard if you wanted to. Now you can see there that it's kind of working its way through the process. And it is doing some planning steps to kind of work out. So it's found 53 patients. It's now generating the SQL to kind of do the next step around that. And at each stage, you can see what's going on. So while that's running, because it will take a minute or two for that to complete, I'll show you what information we have around this agent. So if I click on the agent details at the top there, you can see that we are connected to Snowflake. So the data within our organization that we've collated in Snowflake is what we're connecting to. So we're effectively doing that augmentation with our data. We're using those models against our data. The other thing we have there is unstructured data. So again, Snowflake talks about any data. So whether that's structured in terms of tables and columns, or whether that's semi-structured in terms of XML, etc., or completely unstructured. So that could be video files, it could be images, it could be audio files, basically. So you can bring and use that data in here, and there are capabilities to turn, for instance, transcribe audio files into text, and then you can kind of create the structured kind of components around that. But you can see we've got a little overview of what this agent is. So you can see it's a genomics clinical insight. It gives you an idea of where the data came from. So again, you're providing this information back to anyone who's using this agent, so they have some understanding around it. And again, because we will have, validated this, we may have example questions that we could ask of this data set. So these are validated questions effectively. So these might be things that everyone comes in and kind of asks. Again, your role determines what data you can see, and that also applies to the agent as well. So if I was a analyst role and there was a kind of administrator role, they would both see, they could ask the same question to the same agent, but they might see different results depending on their role-based access control. So that's consistent on the platform all the way through. So you can see that there's example questions, etc., that you can have. Just close that down, see where we're up to on here. So sorry, it has gone through and done quite a bit. And it's now doing, so you can see that it's gone through the structured data that we had. So it's gone through the tables and columns, it's generated out the structured information that we've got. It's now kind of looking outside the organization in terms of the clinical data. So once it's kind of executed this, we'll start to get some of that information back. Whilst that's happening, is there any questions on what I've spoken about so far? Does that make, hopefully that makes sense. Feel free to ask questions if you want as we go along. Also, whilst that's running, you can see that at the bottom here, you can, and in this case, I'm just kind of effectively executing it as a query. There's the ability to enable research. So it basically allows you to use it as a sandbox to ask questions of. So what it is the behind the scenes, the agent isn't collating this information for performance or statistics, etc. And it just allows you to kind of explore what's going on. Okay, so now we've got to the end of, and it's still just executing that query, but you can see that it's starting to push that data back. So if I just go back to the top here, hide those details a little bit, we can see that it's completed the thinking behind what's going on here. It found 53 patients, and then it's trying to effectively kind of work out how it's going to present this back to you. So essentially, you can see what the key findings are. It can give you the patient. So we asked the question at the beginning. So it's kind of showing you that data. It's showing you their status in terms of risk. So it's combined that data with that clinical data, and you're getting the information back. So again, here you can see this 5 patients that it's kind of identified. And then it's looking, it's explaining where, for instance, it's got this information from. So in this case, it was the GP notes. So you can imagine GP notes will be textual information. So it's kind of been able to chunk that data up. It's got consultant letters, and it's got results essentially from there. So you can see that it's come back with a kind of display of a lot of information, but it's kind of natural language. You can get that data back in the tabular format, so you can see the data that it actually generated and brought back. And again, you can kind of explore that a little bit further by basically taking it out. And again, that could be downloaded to CSV, etc. So you've got the ability to maybe take that on to the next step. But if I kind of just hover over, you can see there's quite a lot of information there. So this is where it's gone to. So this is the unstructured data, effectively, the textual information that it's gone into to effectively determine some of those outcomes that we've just seen there. Okay. I could go on and ask more questions of that agent, but you can see that it effectively there are a couple of options there around it. So that is Snowflake Intelligence. Now that's obviously the customer facing, the user facing capability of it. And that is one of the aspects of effectively delivering this. And this is delivered to you on top of the standard kind of Snowflake environment. So if I kind of just quickly go into here, you can see that we provide a relatively simple interface that allows you to do all the kind of elements around that. So what I was using there was Snowflake Intelligence, which you can see here pushes you out. But within that AI ML capability, you have the ability to do machine learning. So you can kind of deploy models, you can create models, you have the ability to manage and monitor your features, etc. if you're doing the data science element of it. And then you've got the ability to kind of do things around that structured and unstructured data and effectively build out those agents. So that AI Studio effectively allows you to do things like the Cortex Analyst, which is what we were kind of effectively layering our agent on top of. We have search services around unstructured data. so documents and WAV files, etc. And as you can see there, you can create the agents. You can use LLMs, and again, you have the ability to use what we call the Cortex Playground, which allows you to compare LLMs. So if you wanted to ask the question, for instance, between a couple of LLMs, so you might have a choice. Basically, if you wanted to use Claude 4 and Claude 5, you can ask the same questions of the data basically and see what the results are. So again, you've got the ability to determine which are the best LLMs that you might want to use. Again, your administrators could restrict them to certain LLMs so that you're not effectively using large ones or expensive ones to do very simple kind of modeling, etc. But again, there's a whole element around it which will probably not have time to kind of demo necessarily. So what I did want to do is kind of move into essentially some of the things that we talked about in terms of, yes, Snowflake Intelligence, but there's a lot of things that have happened on the platform, which essentially are being rolled out as a cloud platform, as a software as a service, effectively. There's a lot of things that get released, and a lot of our customers it's very difficult when you're doing a day job to know all these new features, etc., that are coming out. So I was going to kind of move into a presentation just to show you around Snowflake and essentially what we talked about. Our big event basically around Summit and essentially some of those features that are now available in the product.
Awesome.
Okay. If there's any questions, feel free to put your hand up, put it in the chat, etc. We will try and answer those as well as we go. Because this is talking about features which are available, some of those are now, some of those are kind of effectively about to be released. So we have a release process, which is obviously development. Then we kind of go into what we call private preview, which is where selected customers can use those features. And then we go into public preview, where any customer can actually use that feature, but we recommend you don't use it in production because it may change before we go to GA, which is generally available. And then any customer can use it and it's supported in production, basically. So usual set kind of safe harbors from any software organization, you'll see these. So the idea is that it is a single data platform. As you saw there, I was doing AI capabilities, but I'm not necessarily having to pivot into a different application or a different technical infrastructure basically to do that. The infrastructure that Snowflake provides is fully managed. So essentially you don't have to worry about the hardware in the background, and it's managed for you. So we kind of deliver that capability to all our customers. So we don't restrict the features as a software organization. Your administrators might choose which of those they want to make available to people in your organization, but essentially everything that is on the cart is available to all our customers. There's no additional licenses for using any of the AI capability. It is a pay for what you use model. So essentially, if you use some of the AI capabilities, that will generate compute, and the compute is essentially what is charged to yourselves as an organization. So the idea is to be able to service the platform, essentially. So you've got to be able to do the data engineering to work with that data. You want to be able to do performance analytics. And if you want to kind of use the AI capabilities, that's got to be available as well. We do have, or we're seeing quite a lot of organizations kind of still continuing to use things like dashboards and reports, etc. But there is, as you saw there, the Snowflake Intelligence interface. It's a very simple interface. It doesn't require you to build anything other than the agent, essentially making that available. And then there's other ways that people might deliver it in terms of data applications. So specific applications where people are getting the results that they want, and they might be dynamic. So essentially an application that serves their data requirements. So Snowflake provides that, as we said, is fully managed, is secure, and it's governed. So you do get that visibility around it. So some of the big announcements that were made around our kind of roadmap elements of it, you've seen one of them, that's Snowflake Intelligence. That was obviously clearly, it kind of moves or it brings to life that AI capability around your data. Then there are other things around that. We're not going to go into every single one of these, but we will kind of go into a couple of categories effectively where these are all kind of bundled together. So you can see that the platform is growing in terms of its capability. Some of that is enhancements on what's already there. Some of it is new capability that may not have been there in the past, basically. So the way we kind of broke this presentation down is it's kind of broken down into these 6 categories to kind of cover the kind of platform, data engineering, analytics, AI, and the app side of things. So I'll start with the first one around that. So we, as a organization, believe that we want to deliver a single unified platform to our customers so that they don't have to manage multiple kind of infrastructures, and they don't have to manage a lot of technology. So take away some of that inertia that you have. So for instance, if you wanted to start an AI project, you would have to work out who you want to work with, which cloud you want to provide it on, which are the features you want to use, and you may have to build that, network it, build the security and governance around it. This delivers that to you without you having to go through that exercise, basically. So it is a single platform. It is made up of really 2 components, which are the data and the compute. So we have storage, so that's why we can store any type of data, and then you have the compute, which might run on top of that data to effectively kind of calculate and extrapolate that data out, and then you can put AI on top of that. Basically, the architecture is flexible, so we are not, we don't say you have to use a particular kind of methodology. Essentially, we do support, and there might be variations of these, combinations of these, and there may be others that we haven't kind of listed here, but the architecture is flexible. You can choose how you want to use Snowflake. Essentially, it will support all of those capabilities around it. And as I said earlier, we do talk about all the data in your organization. So basically, previously, if you worked with SQL Server, it would typically be structured data. We do not have that constraint. You can bring in your XML, you can bring in your unstructured data, your Word documents, etc. The difference is it's not just static data. You can actually do something on that data. So you can take that structured data, unstructured data, and you can use some of these capabilities that we now have with AI effectively to extrapolate that data from those unstructured documents and turn that into meaningful data that you can actually use going forward. So again, that the reason we can do that is that compute is flexible. We have the ability to work with traditional kind of CPU capabilities, and then you have variations on that. What that does is gives us the opportunity to use some of these GPUs. So for the AI capabilities, you do need a little bit of extra. That again isn't a challenge for you. The infrastructure from Snowflake provides you the ability to use that. You just choose to use those capabilities when you're in the platform. That does also mean that we can support different languages. So yes, we are traditionally kind of SQL oriented, but you can use other languages like Python, Java, and Scala against it. And there are capabilities around that. We have native notebook capability. We support SQL. We have standard ANSI SQL, but we also kind of enrich that with, Snowflake specific functions, which allow you to do some of these things at scale, basically. Again, with things like the AI side of it, the large language models, there are many providers who are providing those. We support a lot of the leading, if not all the leading models on our platform. So basically what it does mean is you don't have to have necessarily a relationship with any of these organizations, but you can still use their models securely within the Snowflake environment. Again, you have that flexibility that cloud offers. You've got that elasticity around the sizing. You can scale up, you can scale down, you can scale out, depending on what the workload is. As an organization, we continue to effectively work on that platform to enrich it, to make it more efficient. And there is a commitment for getting better price performance on a year-by-year basis. And that has continued. So a lot of customers who have been with us for, say, 3 to 4 years, basically, they will see that the same execution of the same queries effectively cost them less now than it did 3 years ago, basically. And that's purely things that will happen on the platform to make it more optimized performance. That could be hardware changes in the data centers, but that is delivered seamlessly to our customers with no downtime, basically. And again, it is a charge for what you use. So basically, if you don't use any of those capabilities, like I said, everything on the cart is available. If you choose not to use those capabilities, you don't pay for them. These are some of the performance elements that have been included into the back end of the platform. So essentially, a lot of customers will not necessarily notice that these things have happened, but they will be delivered to the customer seamlessly and are available for you to be able to use. So a couple of things that were kind of announced around our summit basically is this adaptive compute. So historically, you've been able to scale up and down and basically bring in, size your compute according to the workload, essentially. This is a new capability that allows you to automate that process. So essentially, it's a kind of serverless approach where, depending on the workload, Snowflake will determine what the best way is to execute that query, basically. So whether that's on a small, like extra small kind of, we have t-shirt sizes in terms of the compute. So it's extra small, small, medium, large, etc., all the way up to kind of 6XL. But the idea is that you don't have to necessarily know what the size of the compute is. You're allowing Snowflake to determine that based on the query that's going to be pushed towards it. Again, it's a flexible approach. You may want to kind of start with the traditional kind of compute, and then when you're confident that it's able to deliver, you can move over to this element of it. So that was the platform. Those are the things that are happening on the platform at a generic kind of pace to kind of deliver more capability. The other thing that tends to happen is around governance, basically. We want to make sure that you're happy that your data is being governed and it's delivered in a secure way to your organization. So again, from a Snowflake perspective, we have enhanced capabilities around that, what we call Horizon Catalog. So catalog it's not necessarily one single product. It's baked into the Snowflake environment. The idea is that we store the metadata around your data. We make that data available to you. So we have things like data profiling on your data. You can kind of put governance policies. So if you have PII information, you can put those policies into the base of the data. The idea being is that you're building up that catalog close to where the data exists. Now, if you then in the future state want to integrate that with an enterprise catalog, you will have all the metadata at the Snowflake level to feed into that enterprise data governance kind of process. But the idea is that we're open. It's an open platform in the sense that we are working in open standards. So the idea behind the Horizon Catalog is that it will be able to work and integrate with what might be in the ecosystem. So whether that data sits outside Snowflake in Postgres, Parquet, Delta, Iceberg, whatever that might be, or whether it sits within native Snowflake, you will have visibility of that. And again, if you are using Iceberg, there are multiple ways where that catalog could exist. We would integrate and work with those organizations. So the idea is that you can then have the data stored in Snowflake, cataloged in Snowflake, and you could use any kind of compute engine to effectively use it, including the Snowflake one. But if there was a need for this, you could have a more hybrid kind of setup. So Horizon Catalog is designed, as I said there, is to kind of give you that end-to-end visibility, basically, from source of your data to where it might end up. So you have that lineage, basically, not just within Snowflake, but also at the kind of edge cases around that. You can see there that it would work with a lot of the source systems that you may already have, like Oracle, SQL Server, etc. Probably some Postgres within the organizations. And again, from a consumption perspective, whether that's Power BI, Tableau, etc., you would have that ability to do it. The key element around catalog is that essentially it's the metadata. It's making that visible to you as an organization so that you can act upon it in the best way you deem necessarily for your organization. We also have, for the catalog, you can start to ask questions of it. So for instance, because it's metadata, we have a Copilot. I appreciate Copilot is kind of probably more associated with Microsoft in the current climate, but it's a Copilot. It allows you to ask questions of your catalog. So if you wanted to know which tables are restricted by a certain PII policy, for instance, you could ask that of the metadata and it would give you the result set back. And on that screen, you can see that that is part of Horizon, essentially. That dashboard that you're seeing there, showing the tables, the policies on those tables, the amount of data, etc. All of that is part of the built-in capability around it. The next step in this is once you have that data and you have that catalog capability, how you can reuse those assets within your organization. So we have what we call an internal marketplace. The idea being is that as people in the organization, you may create data assets which you want to be made available or published onto a directory catalog effectively that other people may want to use. And again, that is part of the platform now. So you can create data assets. Each of those data assets has kind of three key elements. There's a data approver, there's a data steward, and there's a data support, basically. The idea being is that you're building up people or in the organization in terms of governance who are responsible for that data asset. So the approver would have to approve anyone using that data. So I could go in and see that that data is available. I might think it's of interest to me because there's some definition around it that tells me a little bit around it, but I won't be able to see that data. I can put a request in to see that data, and then the approver would have to approve it. They may ask me follow-up questions to say, why do you need to see this data? What are you going to use it for? Are you aware of this, that, and the other, basically? Or they may refuse to kind of, because it's, if I was, asking for the HR data with salaries and information, I had no reason to use that data, then obviously that's up to the approver to do it. The idea is that it should make it easy for your organizations to not have to recreate data assets when they already exist. So you can reuse what's already there and you've got a governance model around it. Now, anyone who's used Snowflake may be aware already that we have a public-facing marketplace. This is a private marketplace. This is just your organization. It's just people who are in your organization will be able to see any of the assets that are available. This is not for external consumption. You have all the usual capabilities of being able to search, etc., around it. This was, again, Postgres. Snowflake now supports native Postgres on Snowflake. So historically, we've always been a data platform around analytics, warehousing, lakes, etc. That workload is different to the transactional elements of it. So Postgres in Snowflake now allows you to do transactional kind of workloads in Snowflake. So you can build applications, you can do transactional kind of elements around it. So again, that does open up the opportunity for our customers to maybe use Snowflake, use that compute, use that credit that you have in a different format, basically just using Postgres. So again, that is now available. And kind of, again, it's an extension in terms of working with different types of data within Snowflake. Just pause there. I don't think there's any questions. Happy to take any if there are. Okay, we'll just move into the data engineering side. So again, the idea here is to kind of make that ability to do that data engineering workload as seamless as possible. So basically, we have, again, a product called Snowflake OpenFlow. The OpenFlow element of it addresses this challenge of being able to ingest data into Snowflake quickly. So we're aware that you probably have lots of disparate systems which are providing data. They may be operational data, and you may want to do analytics across the whole lot. What Snowflake OpenFlow works on is the principle that it has lots of connectors to not just structured data sources like your Oracle SQL servers, Teradata's, etc., Postgres, wherever that might be, but it also supports semi-structured and unstructured data sources. And whichever method you need to use, whether that's a secure FTP, whether that's file-based, whether that's a direct connection into a change data capture capability. So if you're doing logging on SQL Server, can you use those logs to move that data across? All of those options become available within OpenFlow. It has multiple connectors that allow you to connect to any data source. And if there's a data source that we don't, and typically we do have most of the major ones, you can write, there's a community, and there can be community connectors that people have created, or there might be ones that you can write yourself. So there's a toolkit for you to be able to do that. Again, it opens up the opportunity to kind of directly connect data and ingest that into Snowflake very, very quickly. So there you can see that there's a couple of use cases around it. It can be change data capture. So if you've got transactional systems that are capturing those changes and you only want to bring the incremental changes across, this can allow you to do that from your transactional systems. You can also use it against your streaming platforms. And again, you can use it for different types of data, whether that's structured or unstructured data. So you can see there that Snowflake from a data engineering perspective. So the elements in blue, the kind of light blue basically, are capabilities on Snowflake platform. This is, you don't have to work with an external provider. You can use all of these capabilities to do data engineering workloads in Snowflake. If you are already using any of these other platforms or you already have a relationship with them and you've already got content built in them, we also interact with those as well. All of those have native connectors to Snowflake, and essentially you can continue to use them. For customers who haven't kind of gone on this journey, they can still use and do the whole data engineering capability within Snowflake. And one of the features around that is dbt projects is now natively available on Snowflake. Again, you don't have to stand up the infrastructure. You can create and deploy your dbt pipelines within Snowflake and use the compute there. Again, just a little bit more on dbt projects. So it now runs natively on Snowflake, allows you to do all that build, test, deploy, schedule them, and monitor those kind of work pipelines. So again, it takes away the need for you to kind of have. I should point out this is dbt projects, so it's the open source version of dbt projects deployed within Snowflake. Just to be clear around that. Again, we have, for anyone who's used Snowflake in the past, we used to have worksheets and notebooks separately. We've kind of combined those into what we call workspaces. The principle behind that is it's kind of file-based workspaces. What that does is it makes it easier for things like CI/CD, so Git integration, etc. So you can kind of check in, check out. And again, that becomes a lot easier because it's all file-based now and you can keep the version control around that. And again, we are part of an open standards community. So we kind of provide and interact with a lot of the open source capabilities around that. So Iceberg, we have that available through Snowflake. You can catalog it as we talked about earlier. We also have Polaris, which is our contribution to the Apache project. And you can see that there's things going forward basically around that. So the idea is to kind of simplify that data lifecycle. So basically, you should be able to bring in all the data, whether it's in Iceberg or within the storage within Snowflake, and you should be able to do all the capabilities around it. So you can see there we've got things like auto discovery. So this is again part of the Horizon element of it, the ability to kind of make sense or use AI in the right places so that effectively we can accelerate your ability to move through. There's a few things on Iceberg which I want to kind of skip through. So we're kind of moving on to the analytics bit now, just to kind of talk about, how we're using analytics to kind of speed up the journey for our customers. So for any of you who are kind of or have had to do kind of migrations from, legacy version of SQL Server, for instance, or Oracle, and you wanted to move data into Snowflake, there's now a capability called SnowConvert. SnowConvert AI, and I'll explain what the AI element of it is, but it allows you to effectively bring on board data from so if you are decommissioning, so if you've got, license about to expire on your on-premise kind of systems and you want to move those into Snowflake, you have the ability to do that. The tool that you could use is SnowConvert. It's an accelerator. It allows you to basically manage the movement of that data across from those platforms. The AI capability within it is that it can also look at things like stored procedures and functions that you've created on those source platforms, and it will attempt to give you an idea of whether it can automatically convert that into a UDF, the equivalent of a stored procedure on Snowflake, or whether you would have to get involved and maybe do some coding around that. Again, it's just an accelerator to kind of give you the ability. We get a very high success rate on the actual database objects. It varies a little bit on the code, basically, just to be transparent around that. So yeah, there you can see it's kind of, it can do quite high level of migration of database objects, so tables, views, etc. Those tend to be not a challenge. It can move those fairly well, and it can do quite reasonably well on terms of kind of converting code as well. We also have a second generation of warehouse now, and this is an optimized warehouse. With this, the caveat is it's slightly more expensive than the standard warehouse. So basically, I would say, if you need to use it, then use it. If you're happy with what you've got at the moment, just continue to use what you've already got. I did mention that we are predominantly a SQL platform, but obviously SQL has its limitations. So we talked about things like the AI capabilities, like being able to effectively transcribe audio files into text. As Snowflake, we have built into the platform so that people who are familiar with SQL, they can use those kind of capabilities and deliver them through a SQL interface effectively. So the idea is that you can push these again into the pipelines if that's your preferred approach, or people who are SQL proficient can use these functions to kind of do this ad hoc as and when they need to. But the idea is to simplify that quite complex so you don't have to write a whole Python script to basically do this. You are just using SQL construct to use a function and be able to use that data. So there's a lot of features which are called AI SQL, the part of the Cortex kind of branding that we have in Snowflake, but they start to allow SQL developers to quickly utilize some of those AI capabilities within Snowflake. So hopefully that gives you an idea around that. We kind of move into AI, just conscious of time. So again, we saw at the beginning the Snowflake intelligence side of things. So this is very much focused around that. This is about you being able to deliver that capability in your organizations with not having to worry about the infrastructure, the complexities, some of the IG concerns around that. So the idea is that you can use any of those models that we talked about. You can use the ability to provide context, so those kind of guardrails can be put in place, and then people are getting accurate answers, basically. So, there's a semantic model that sits on top of, there you go, so with semantic views. So effectively, what you're doing is you're taking your data that exists within your Snowflake environment, and you're creating a semantic view on top of that. A semantic view is a first-class object in Snowflake, so it's an object in Snowflake that you can manage, deploy, move, etc. The idea is that that will give you those guardrails around how those joins should work, how it should return the result sets, etc. around that. So it's additional information and how the security and governance of that model is going to be when people are using it and consuming it. The idea is that the better the semantic view, effectively, the more efficient that makes the query going back to the data. So again, I won't go through this, but essentially the idea is to show you that you can kind of build those semantic views. They determine the query. So when I was using Snowflake Intelligence, you could see that it was building out queries. Those queries are utilizing the logic that I put into the semantic view to make sure that it comes back with the right answer every time, basically. Now, those agents can be used as native applications. So you could kind of build those into applications, and people could be consuming that data through those applications if you wanted to. And again, we have extensions to those semantic models, so you can use. I appreciate these are kind of news, and some of them are data ones, but there is the ability to kind of effectively use third-party data in those kind of intelligence kind of agents. So the idea is if you had a provider who had delivered some of their data on one of these platforms, you can effectively hook that in, and that becomes another source to answering those questions. Just as we had documents that I could look at in Snowflake Intelligence, they could be documents that sit outside the organization. Again, you would have to enable this. It's not there by default. We saw Snowflake Intelligence, so I won't spend a lot of time on this, but you can see that it is the way that we can kind of make the agents available to everyone in the organization. You don't have to be a dashboard. You don't have to know about dashboarding. You can ask the question, and for those kind of simple questions that probably take a lot of the analyst's time, they could probably be answered in this way. This is kind of left to right, is showing that data coming in, what you would do with it. We saw things like the analyst and Cortex in that AI playground. Basically, you can see that the analyst is looking at tables, is looking at writing SQL against those tables, and the search capability is around unstructured data. So how do we sort that unstructured data out? How do we chunk it? How do we rank it so that it's basically able to answer the questions around it? And the agents then orchestrate that to deliver it either through Snowflake Intelligence or even through a third-party application if that's what you would prefer. Again, we have a lot of capabilities around machine learning, so traditional kind of machine learning. There is a whole platform around it. You do have, and we saw a little bit of it, you have the ability to manage the models within Snowflake, have version control, feature stores. We have things like observability, so you can see if a model is starting to effectively drift away from its accuracy, and then you can kind of focus on the models that need to be brought back into line. So all of that is, again, part of the platform if the machine learning element is something that you're using. Again, just in terms of the pipelines, basically making it easier for you to build those out and effectively deploy them. Again, we've got things like co-pilots. We've got a Cortex code, which helps you to generate code effectively. So if you're kind of just want to get a kind of quick idea, it will generate the code for you and show you that to kind of get you going, basically. Finally, I guess we're on to kind of applications. The idea behind this is to make it easier for you to integrate your data into an organization, whether that is traditional kind of dashboarding and reports, or whether that's the new agentic capabilities around it. The idea is that you could have, and we have a principle of zero copy cloning, but there's also zero ETL. If you're using a third party and they are a Snowflake customer, you don't have to necessarily ingest their data and effectively process their data on your side. You can become a consumer of that data. Likewise, you can become a provider. So if your data is required by third parties, you could effectively make that through a governed way available to third parties who may be able to consume it. They could put Tableau, Power BI, whatever query tools they have on top of that Snowflake instance. Again, you have the ability to use any of the capabilities within Snowflake. So you can have different access policies. We have things like differential privacy. So basically what that means is that some people may only be able to see aggregated data and aggregated, so they could say, what are the total patients in a particular region? But what they wouldn't be able to say is show me all the patients in this sector, for instance. They would not see individuals' names, but they could get a count or an empirical kind of aggregate. So there are different ways you can kind of make that data available. Obviously, there's things like masking. So you can obfuscate data, anonymize data if that was what your approach was. The idea being is that you're not having to create lots of different data sets for different consumers. You can do it against one data set and apply all of these capabilities so that the person on the receiving side only sees the data they're entitled to. This probably tends to be less in our sector, but essentially we do have availability across the globe, so different data centers. So we can kind of sometimes, if you've got data in Google or Azure, basically, we can help to join that data up because we exist in all of those organizations around that. This one's a difficult one. It says commercialize with Snowflake. Essentially what it is it's how you can make that data available outside. Some organizations will put a price on that. You could as well, if some of that data is, I mean, we talked to some organizations who are thinking about using their data, but charging private companies for instance. But obviously, this is something that can be done. It can be done as a data for good kind of project, or it could be behind a commercial kind of capability around it. I won't go into offers for now. So yeah, I mean, that was to kind of give you, I want to give a little, at least 5 minutes at the end to kind of have a quick kind of, if there's any questions. But that was a quick overview. So I say quick, but it was like, as you can see, the platform's kind of growing. There's a lot of capabilities around it. So happy to answer any questions.
I know in the past you've done, sorry, like some trainings and stuff throughout the year. So is there any ones of coming up that you want to make people aware of, things that they can get involved in to learn more about Snowflake and how to use it?
So there's a couple of things. First of all, we have available online the Snowflake Essentials Learning Path, where you can have six, there are 6 learning paths starting from basic data warehousing, going right through to data science. That is available at no cost. We also have Build on the 3rd of February, and this is for your hardcore developers, people in analytics wanting to get, excuse my language, down and dirty with the data. That is a fantastic opportunity to learn more about Snowflake, but to really upskill. That's at the not the Excel Centre, it's at the
Intercontinental.
Intercontinental opposite
slide.
the other side of the river. We also have data for breakfast. There are a number of these in a number of cities. Manchester is the 17th, and we will be sending through details of that as soon as the landing page is built. And
Awesome.
Also the 18th is London. And what Data for Breakfast is, it's a series of Snowflake events that we do globally, where we engage, talk about new enhancements, etc., etc. So there is lots of enablement available with Snowflake and lots of opportunity to get engaged. Obviously, we have Snowflake World Tour, which is always held in October. And there are other events through our various user groups, which tend to be more regional. And if you're in London, then we have the One London Community, Snowflake Community of Practice, which we support with Ruth Holland and her team. And we do a number of events. In fact, the one that we're doing next week is on Snowflake certification and all the various different learning paths. And of course, the biggie was, and it's just closed, was we were part of DCIT's Get Tech Certified. So we've done that for the last 2 years. We'll probably do it this year, funding permitted, because it does cost us $250,000 to fund this, where participants can take advantage of paid Snowflake training, but they need to be at a specific level to do that. So you need to complete a number of badges from the Essentials Learning Path. Then you can go on to Fundamentals Training, which we normally charge £1,700 for. It's a 4-day course. But we waive the fees as part of the Get Tech Certified, and then you can go on to your Snow Pro certification. So there's lots of stuff we do all year round, and lots of no-cost enablement.
That's awesome. Thank you. Anything else, Janet, you want to say? We got about a minute, 2 minutes left if you want to finish us off.
It's just really to thank everyone for that interest, and it'd be just good to do a quick round robin of, obviously, Carolyn, I know why you attended the call, because you asked us, but everyone else, just a little bit, just where they're from and why they attended the call. Starting with Godsey. Hopefully I've pronounced that correctly. This is a great way of checking whether people are on the call. Robert? Nope.
Oh, no, I'm here.
I saw you with your big speaker done earlier.
I'm here. If Robert, I don't want to Robert nervous, but Rob and I work together, and I told him that this had some AI components, which is something he's really interested in. So he's kind of tagging along to learn a bit more about AI.
Oh, there you go.
Good, you didn't
exactly,
have
Alex, exactly why.
And Christina? Either everyone's shy here.
Hello, I'm Christiana. So 2 seconds, please. Yeah. So I recently joined the DDAT as a career pathway personnel, and I just joined to see how the AI and the AphA session goes to be able to learn based on my data journey going forward.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Para?
Good afternoon. My name is Parazai, or simply Para. I'm a healthcare assistant, but I have a thing for data science and analytics. I did my postgrad with a university in America, but then yes, I thought maybe me getting onto this platform. Sorry, I'm getting a bit digressing a bit. Me joining this professional would help me leverage on what I've done before and try and just get to know a lot about data, about health analytics. That's it. Yeah.
Lovely. And Matthew?
Yeah, I'm Matthew. I'm from specialist analyst from Mersey West Lancs Teaching Hospitals, and I wanted to learn and understand a bit more about Snowflake in general because I haven't come across them before.
Okay, well, just
Thanks,
for your, obviously we're used by Greater Manchester ICB. If you would like us to follow up and put you into contact with our colleagues there, and also Matthew, we can invite you for Data for Breakfast in Manchester.
It's certainly something I'll think about and let you know once I've processed everything I've learned today. Thank you.
Lovely. All right. And last but not least, I just want to thank Irfan for doing such an excellent presentation.
Yes, it was really good. Thank you. Learned a lot. Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Well, yes, that's it for us for today. So thank you everyone for joining. And Janet, if you just want to keep sending me any trainings you want me to put in the magazine, I can keep doing that.
Yep, we will do. All right, lovely.
Awesome.